Hello, friends. Today we are going to wire wrap little puffy hearts. I have a couple here that I was just working on over on the clock app. And we're going to use those here in just a little bit to show different ways we can finish this pendant. But the first thing we're going to do is make the cage, and we're going to need to get a few wires to start with. I'm working with 20 gauge round right now, and I like to leave myself an inch or two above the stone to work with for my bail. And so then I'm going to want to double this, and I'm going to need 4 pieces of base wire for this project. So I'm going to make them all the same length, or close to it. Get those all kind of lined up together. Thank you for the like. Hello, friend. Now we're going to take 20 gauge half round, and we're going to bind these 20 gauge round wires. I like to do 1, 2, 3, we'll do 4, 5, wraps around, and then I make a space. Whenever I'm doing a heart shape or an inverted drop, I intentionally make this little gap right here so that I can easily know where I need to make my cradle for the point of the cabochon. I didn't think when scheduling this about the fact that 11 is about when the rainbows are all over the table. It's kind of cute. Alright, so once we have those, we're all close together, flattened down. We'll pinch right there and make that little point. Oop. And then I like to, this part's kind of tricky, but I like to alternate the wires while I'm forming the shape so that it doesn't, oh, come on, YouTube. So that it doesn't make the frame lean one way or the other. Doesn't make it uneven or wonky. Oh, look, I got one of those in the wrong place. Oop, let's fix that. Well, now I gotta do them all again. There we go. All right. So we have this situation. And we're going to take our little puffy heart. And actually, let's see, which side of this is the flashiest? I feel like this one. So we're going to nest that little bugger down in the crook. look there. Oof. Have to open it up a little more. It's a wide one. It's very puffy. Very puffy, puffy heart. Alright, and then we're gonna... The tricky thing about these, you can't just lay them on the table to make your shape because of the puffy. It's a little harder. Holding them seems to be easier than trying to lay them flat, because then you end up with it too skinny in the backside. Just a little tricky. Ziggy, what's the matter, buddy? Where you going? Silly puppy dog. And then straightening those out so they can sit side by side. So I marked the wire where I wanted to bend it to make the bail, squeezing it together. And then we'll test and perfect that with the cab here in just a second. And make sure it fits the way we want it to. Yes! Before we go on and bind those, I have a little bit of polishing compound on my fingers, so the oxidation on the copper is sticking to my fingies. Now we're going to take that 20 gauge half round and we're going to start binding all 8 of these together. And the most challenging part about binding round wire is that the pieces, we want them, here I'm going to lift this real quick. We want them to sit like this, even with one another. But round wires want to do this. And so it's tricky a little bit to get them to sit parallel with one another. That's kind of the biggest challenge. So I try to be mindful of that particular challenge as I start. And then I like to bind 5 times. I'm going to go ahead and tuck this in. At the top, 3 is perfectly sufficient, but 5 gives me just a little extra security and also a little extra room in the bail to play with. As far as like design real estate. Thanks for hanging out in here today, y'all. All right. So once we're all bound up and even, we're going to take the front wire from each side forward and the back 3 wires from each side back toward the side they came from. What are you doing? You belong over here, and you belong over here. Let's try that again. Now it's really easy for us to see, to get those lined up. Ta-da! Tricky, tricky though. So then we'll take that half round wire just through the middle there, just like that. We want to get it as close as we can to that previous bit of half round wire. Whoop, it's flipping on me. Let's not do that. There we go. Tricky, tricky. There we go. People ask what wire I think is more difficult to work, whether I have a preference for round or square, and I'm like, you guys, half round is the hardest. And I'm absolutely defiant and work it off the spool. It's just easier for me though than having a loose end. Some people prefer to cut the half round before they work it, or weaving wire even. However way works for you is 100% valid. All I can share is my experience and what works for me. It's worth noting that I also have like really large hands. And some of the choices that I've made, including which tools I use and which gauges of wire I use most frequently, are in part because of how they feel in my hands, and they might not feel right to you, you know? So if you need to size up or size down or work with smaller cabochons or larger cabochons, it's totally okay. It's my personal opinion that there's no wrong way. To do art. I just think more people should engage in it. I'm so thankful. This started as a therapy for me and became my contribution to my family and many other families. So thankful for this art. So I like to make a relatively large veil because I never know what kind of chain or necklace these pendants are going to end up on. And so I want them to be able to accommodate whatever size clasp might be on that chain. So let's measure it. It's going to guesstimate, but we can measure. We have the tools. It's right at just under an inch long. I'm going to take my little flat nose pliers and just bend that and curl those wires down and through the cage that we already made, right through the middle there. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your likes. You guys are awesome. First time live on the new app. I mean, you know, new for me. You probably know because you're probably here from that community, but just in case you don't know, I wrap live almost daily on the Clock app currently. And I'm kind of looking for a new home, just in case. So I'm hoping we can build a little community here too. So those wires went out the front, and then I brought them around all four of those base wires again, and then we tuck them in right there so they'll be inside the piece when it's done, and those little ends won't be available to catch on anybody's clothing or scratch anyone's skin. We don't want to destroy your sweater unless you want us to hold this strand as you walk away. Otherwise, we don't want the jewelry to do it. Alright. So now we've got our little cage made. Let's see. Where do you sparkle best? Let's do it again. I think, whoop, I've dropped it. Which side? I think you smile better. You smile for the camera. So we'll take that back 2 wires with our flat nose pliers. We'll pull out away from the other 3 wires and in toward the middle. Because these aren't flat-backed cabochons, they're puffy hearts, we have to make a little space away from the frame so that they can slide in there. So sparkly. We'll do the same thing on the front. We gotta take that front wire and in toward the middle, but we'll just drag it along. We're not gonna intentionally pull it away. We'll let it sit right on top of the stone. And then I like to just squeeze a little bit on the point to make sure everything's nice and secure. I also like to reinforce this. Squeeze on that a little bit. Make sure those are all connecting with the stone. It wouldn't hurt to do that with nylon pliers, especially if you're relatively new to wire wrap and you don't know how much pressure to use to not mark your wire with your tools. Nylon pliers, which of course mine are just shredded. I need to get new nylons for them, but you can use nylons for that job as well, and they'll keep it from marring the piece as you work. So now we're in this place where we have a couple of these here. Someone on a live stream the other day asked for ideas about how to finish a piece, how to fill this space, ways to use the wire to finish a piece. So I made a couple blanks and I thought I would show you guys a couple of different ways that I finish pieces, with 4 base wires. And the first one I'll do here, I just take the front wire from the left side and bring it around and tuck it back into the left side up above where that bale wire went through. About as high up as you can get under the bale, because you're going to put a couple more wires up there too. And then the second wire, you're going to do a really similar thing, but just a little bigger, right? And then hold that while you tuck it in. And again, I always try to finish pieces or finish wires inside the piece. And then we'll take the front wire from the right side and make another smaller, not quite mirroring, but real similar shape down here. And we want to get again pretty close to, we're going to go under the bale wire this time, but as close as we can get to it. Leave just enough room to tuck in, but not so much that it goes out past those 4 wires. And then we'll take the second wire from that side and again do a really similar thing, but bigger. And we're going to tucky tuck right here. And now for these last two wires, I'm going to finish, the bottom first and then the top. But I just do kind of a similar line, but on the last one, I bring it just in front of and short. So I told you to put that one up as close as you can get, but we're actually going to force this one in. Just a little higher. And then this guy's going to come down, go out. And I usually actually attach this one under that bail wire. You know, it's a little different with each piece depending on where the cabochon sits in the pendant and what attachment points are really available. But if you've got some open space above the cap, which I tend to like to leave, this is a really nice way to kind of fill it. We also have this option where we can, let's see which side is longer. I think these are longer for sure, so we'll go this way. And you'll bring that front wire up in front and just make a circle. And then swirl it over. Oop. And I'm always, when I'm making these attachments here, I'm always holding really tightly to whatever design I've made on the front that I'm satisfied with, because if you start to fold this over and you're not smashing this, it's going to pull the design with it. I don't want that. And then we'll do a really similar line to this with the second wire from the right side. I'm leaving room for the third to do the same. All right, and then one more on this side. And we're connecting above the bail wires here. Ah. And then with our left side wires, we're going to come follow this line and attach under. And I'm going to leave that right there for a second. We're going to do the same thing with the other two. Just making a little air between each pull. And then definitely with the top two, maybe the bottom one. I'm going to go ahead and come over here and tuck it in the back. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid our third one won't be quite long enough, so we might have to tuck it right where it's at. We'll look and see. Yeah, it's going to be too short. So we'll snip and tuck it right here. That's no surprise to me. Just a few minutes, baby.
Okay.
I love you. I'm almost done. I bet Liam's ready for a sandwich. Alright. So I'm just making some little adjustments to make sure that everything lays nice. And then we'll do the same thing here where we're tightening. All of the little ways that we can to ensure that that stone fits in there nice and tight. So there's a secondary finish. And then a third alternative is very similar, starts very similar to that second one. We'll go the other way around this time just because we can. So you'll pull the front wire from the left side forward and make a circle. Tuck that in. And then the secondary one following a similar line with just a little air there. Third. Always trying to tuck in inside of the cage. Nice and secure. That looks kind of silly, doesn't it? There we go, that's better. And then this time, instead of bringing the swoops around a couple times, we're going to make a couple of curls down on the face of the stone. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this one over and just connect it. But then the other two, I'm going to stretch down over to this point. I'm still going to make the little swoop with the little space, but then I'm going to hold it right here and change directions. And then same thing for this one. Hold it right here and change directions. And we'll use our 20 gauge half round to bind those two wires to this front wire on the cage. I'm making a little room with my snips there because it's easy to get the blade under that wire. get a small piece of 20 gauge half round. And slide it in there, and we're going to bind 3 times around these 3 wires. Easier said than done, but worth it. I want them to lay relatively flat with one another, hence all this extra kind of, there we go, wiggling I'm doing with it. There we go. And we'll get that up where it's as high as it can go so that little thing can't just swirl around on us or slide around our little binding. We don't want it to be able to move up and down. So we slide it up as far as it'll go comfortably, you know, and then we're going to make this curl to reinforce that space so that it doesn't allow that to wiggle on us. Taking my round nose pliers, grabbing the end of that wire where I just cut it, and turning it in on itself, and then slowly and carefully kind of, there we go. And we're going to change directions again with this one. We've got it following this line, and we're going to group, change directions. And we're going to snip it and curl it as well. With the very tip of the round nose pliers all the way in on itself. Oops, that was noisy. And then we'll bind again. This time I'm actually just going to grab some 26 gauge round. I wouldn't want anything to grab this and lift this curl up off of the pendant. So I'm going to use this 26 gauge round because I don't think we got quite enough room there for the 20 gauge half round. But we will bind at least 3 times again. I have a tendency to like 3 or 5 odd numbers draw the eye more. I like to twist off wires of this size because it makes the break where you can't get it generally. Like where the snips can't access. This one actually looks a little... Oh, I can't. So there we have it. Puffy hearts 3 ways. I hope if you have questions or comments, you'll leave them on the replay. Thank you for hanging out with me today.